Today we have on the test bench a very interesting laptop because although we're talking about an Asus model with a dedicated graphics card, meaning it also has gaming capabilities, it's not part of the TUF or ROG series. Asus V16 by name, it's a device that comes both with good capabilities for casual gaming and with functions and specifications designed for productivity. It's a sort of hybrid that looks more sober and presentable than a traditional gaming laptop, but still has some power under the hood just in case. More precisely, in case you also want to comfortably play games on it. It's also the first laptop with an RTX 5050 that we've received, so we're extremely curious to see how it performs in real life. Well, let's get to know it, shall we? We start as usual with the exterior, an area in which the Asus V16 doesn't impress, but also doesn't disappoint. It is built entirely out of plastic, which was to be expected for a laptop of this kind. But the good news is that the materials used feel good to the touch and don't give you a cheap feeling. We have a matte black casing with a discrete textured finish, which if it catches the light at the right angles, lends the laptop a premium air. The keyboard is backlit with a cool blue, which makes the WASD keys look like a control panel from a spaceship. The typing experience seemed fine to me, and you'll surely get your work done without problems, but I would have liked a bit more travel in the key press. What I did like, however, is that each key has enough space between it and the next one, so you don't end up with wrong inputs when typing fast. The full-sized numpad is a plus for some, especially if you work with numbers a lot, and overall there are few things I can fault this laptop for when it comes to the keyboard. The touchpad is bigger than on previous generations, which makes navigation more comfortable and precise. This impressed me, and I consider it a strong point of this laptop. The trackpad, besides being generous in size, is also extremely precise, and it's one of the few laptops in this price category that is pleasant to use without a mouse. I'm glad to see that Asus have started paying attention to this function even on more budget models, and in my eyes this is a big plus for the V16. Returning to the construction discussion, the hinge is also surprisingly solid. The screen flexes a bit, which was somewhat expected from a plastic build, but the joints are responsibly made. I think it could withstand years of normal use without problems, so you don't have to worry about reliability. The 16-inch screen is Full HD with a 144Hz refresh rate. It's an IPS panel with a 16:10 aspect ratio, and along with the generous trackpad, this is the second advantage when it comes to productivity, as the slightly taller format than 16:9 allows you to see more rows in Excel or in a browser. Still, when it comes to color-sensitive tasks, the screen doesn't excel. The colors are not too vivid or vibrant, and for serious photo or video editing, you'll need a more capable external display, but for everyday activities, it does the job. Don't think it looks washed out, but I didn't find it quite suitable for higher level photo-video editing. On the other hand, for gaming and browsing, it is very good. It feels fast and fluid, and in the end, we're talking about an IPS panel and not OLED. So, considering all this, I declare myself satisfied. As for what lies under the hood, in the order of the numbers on the jersey, we have an Intel Core i7-240H processor, accompanied by an RTX 5050 graphics card with 8 GB of VRAM. I agree that only 8 GB of VRAM no longer sounds all that impressive these days, but keep in mind that the panel included is just slightly above 1080p, so even for current games it should be enough. But for that, I'll keep you in suspense a bit longer. And anyway, it's still an improvement over the 6 gigs on the 4050, and I'm glad Nvidia didn't release a useless card from the start. As for the processor, we're not doing badly here either. Intel still tends to make processors that are a bit more efficient than AMD's, so I don't mind the choice. And with 10 cores in total, of which only 4 are for efficiency and the remaining 6 for performance, the Core i7-240H should be enough in most usage scenarios this laptop was designed for. But more on that in a moment. In terms of memory and storage, the laptop comes with 16 gigs of DDR5 RAM and a 1TB PCI Express 4.0 SSD. And if you feel that's not enough, there's room to upgrade up to 32 gigs of RAM and a larger SSD. The downside is that you can't add another one alongside the one you have, but must replace the existing one, which is still fine. In general, laptops with two M.2 slots are increasingly rare around the $1,000 mark, which is about where this one sits, so it's not surprising. Temperatures are managed by a cooling system called Ice Cool with 2 fans and heat pipes, and to our surprise, even under demanding workloads, the laptop manages to keep a decent noise level, which is a small miracle for a gaming-capable laptop these days. Even in tests like Cinebench R23 in loop, on performance mode, the laptop maintains decent and relatively stable temperatures, all while not sounding like it's about to take off from the desk. And now that we've seen what the V16 looks like and what it hides under the hood, it's time to see how it handles when put to work. The first test we ran was Cinebench 2024, where we got 669 points in multi-core and 117 in single-core. At first glance, the multi-core score seems quite low, and it's an aspect we've also encountered during other CPU tests, and that's also because Intel's current generation mobile processors weren't designed for outstanding raw performance, but primarily to offer a balance between increased battery life and decent performance. Performance that clearly won't blow you away, but also won't get in your way when handling daily tasks. For the same reason, the 14,976 points in multi-core obtained in Cinebench R23 can't be considered a great score, but neither a disappointing one. And the 1,958 points in single core are also a decent result for this laptop. The situation was similar in Geekbench 6, where in the CPU test we obtained 11,837 points in multi-core and 2,682 in single core. Not great, not terrible, and it's clear that this laptop is no powerhouse from a performance perspective. In the 3D Mark Suit benchmarks, which we ran after the CPU-focused ones, we obtained somewhat better results. The first was still Nomad, with 1,812 points, then we continued with Firestrike Extreme, where we got an overall score of 9,209 points, with 9,631 in graphics, 22,103 in physics, and 4,597 combined. In TimeSpy Extreme, the final result was 4,207 points, 4,097 graphics and 5,016 CPU. We got 1,896 and 4,590 points in the tests focused on ray tracing, namely Speedway and Port Royal. So far, the mobile 5050 has managed to get scores almost identical to the 4050 we tested in the past, also on an Asus laptop in roughly the same range as this one. And to be honest, there were even times when that laptop got higher scores than this one, even though on paper it has slightly weaker specifications, probably because of the tough ecosystem which focuses on maximizing performance. Still, benchmark results don't necessarily reflect how the laptop performs in real-life usage scenarios. And since nobody buys a laptop like this to play 3D Mark, let's see how it handles some of the most demanding games available on the market. First on the list was Cyberpunk 2077, which I initially ran at native resolution with ultra graphics settings, no DLSS and no ray tracing. As expected, the average frames per second stayed around 38, which isn't terrible, but it's what I call barely playable and not an optimal gaming experience. But we still have a graphics card from the 5000 series, so there was no way I wouldn't see how it runs when fully using what Nvidia has to offer. So, with DLSS set to quality, sharpness at 0.60 and multi-frame generation on, the average frame rate stayed around 102, and that's with ray tracing set to medium, so I could also enjoy a better visual experience. At 1080p, things were even better, with an average of 45 FPS without DLSS and RT, and 112 FPS on average when enabling DLSS and ray tracing at the same values as before. I don't know what you think, but I find it amazing how well the laptop runs, especially when you make full use of everything Nvidia provides. And it's stunning that you can play such an intensive title like Cyberpunk in these conditions at over 110 FPS. You're practically making almost full use of the display's 144Hz refresh rate. Doom: The Dark Ages was no worse, because at 1920 by 1080p resolution, with graphics set to high and no upscaler, I got an average of 51 frames, with a minimum of 34 and a maximum of 70. Don't forget that Doom: The Dark Ages was released just a few months ago, and on top of that, it's a damn demanding game for hardware. so the laptop performed exceptionally. And yes, just like before, when you enable DLSS on quality and turn on MFG, the frame rate increases substantially to an average of 138 frames per second, with minimums of 106 and maximums of 254. True, there are certain VRAM limitations when you want to enable path tracing, but I think the game looks absolutely stunning even without path tracing on, so I doubt anyone will complain about that. Still, there were some artifacts here and there with multi-frame generation enabled, both in Cyberpunk and in Doom. But it's a small price to pay for a gaming experience that otherwise would have been impossible. Anyone who's had a laptop with an RTX 3050 or 4050 will tell you that it didn't reach over 100 frames per second in the games of the time, at high details and with ray tracing. And since it couldn't be otherwise, I decided to try my luck in CS2 as well, because I'm sure many of you are curious to see how the laptop performs in esports. Well, at native resolution with graphics settings on high and no DLSS, because how else would you play CS, the frames per second stayed between 100 and 160. Satisfactory results to me, a mostly casual Counter-Strike player. However, if you're a hardcore player who wants to connect the laptop to a higher refresh rate monitor and also wants a beefier frame rate, you can lower the graphics preset for a few extra frames per second. Overall, I'm satisfied with how the Asus V16 performs in games, and even though it's not a powerhouse, I'm sure it will handle the newest and most demanding games for quite some time from now, provided you accept that you won't always be able to enjoy games at the highest path tracing settings and that DLSS will become a must for AAA titles. And because nothing is perfect, another thing I didn't like besides the somewhat washed out screen colors is the speakers. They get pretty loud at maximum volume, but audio quality suffers once the volume slider goes past 80%. Honestly, even at a medium volume, the sound isn't the best, and I recommend a pair of headphones if you plan to game or watch movies and shows. Don't get me wrong, the built-in speakers are decent, but a bit too weak for my taste. As for connectivity, the lineup is almost complete. USB-C with power delivery and DisplayPort, 2 USB-A ports, HDMI 2.1 for 4K 120 or 8K 60, and Bluetooth 5.3, plus a Full HD webcam with a physical cover, and AI-powered microphones for clear calls. What I honestly would have liked to see is an SD card slot, since the laptop was also designed with productivity in mind. It's an omission I hope will be fixed in future generations, but for now you're limited to USB adapters. As for wireless internet, we have Wi-Fi 6, which, yes, it isn't Wi-Fi 6E or 7, the most modern standards, but in our tests the network card was sufficient for most scenarios. The laptop weighs about 1.95 kilograms, making it relatively portable for a device with these specifications. The 63 Wh battery offers decent life for light tasks, but if you need to run large projects or do video editing on battery, don't count on more than 3 hours without plugging in. Similarly, if you want more serious gaming, you'll need to be plugged in anyway. But for regular office tasks, the laptop performs honorably in terms of battery life. Finally, it's time to talk about the price. I've seen this laptop listed at $1,100, $1,200, and to be honest, I think it's a good deal. There are quite a few alternatives in this price segment, but in my opinion, Asus has managed to deliver a competitive product that gives you a bit of everything without leaving anything important out. Yes, it doesn't have the best screen or the highest performance, but overall I'm satisfied with how the new Asus V16 comes across. The fact that you have access to Nvidia's latest technologies helps so much in games that I don't see why you'd still buy a laptop with the RTX 4000 series, and I've seen firsthand how multi-frame generation really makes a difference in a weaker configuration compared to the desktop cards we're used to. Sure, you know for certain that on a 5090 multi-frame gen will be amazing, but I want to point out that it also works respectably on the baby of the family, this RTX 5050 laptop. And with that said, I'm waiting for your thoughts below in the comments section. How do you like the Asus V16 and this idea of a do-it-all laptop? One that you can work on, but also game comfortably on. How do you see the price compared to what the V16 offers? And that being said, please subscribe here on Techniqualities and turn on your notifications. Until next time, thank you all and happy gaming!